Last month, I made a video about arena fighters and went into slight detail on how most arena fighters are very anti-competitive since they're really hard to balance when a third plane is introduced, while also giving a couple examples of games that pulled off the third plane quite well. While I was able to describe why the latter games were better, I don't think that video was enough to show the difference in the games thoroughly. I didn't plan to make a follow-up video, but I felt a complete analysis of two different arena fighters, one I felt got it wrong, and one I felt got it right, would be a good closing to my thoughts on the genre. The two games I'm going to be comparing today are Shrek SuperSlam and One Piece Grand Adventure, and I'm going to tackle as many details as I can think in order to describe the importance of said details in these types of games. This is going to pay attention to both the general game design and from a competitive aspect, so I'd like to take these into categories. The first category I'm going to discuss is the visual design. While graphics don't matter is a common phrase thrown around, it's only true to a point. To start out this category, I'm going to bring up the HUD. A game's HUD is usually very important. It can display your life bar, the time left in the game, your meter, and many other important things depending on the genre. Now if you've seen it, this goes without saying. Shrek SuperSlam has a very poor HUD design. The main issue is the lack of HUD. Most games will have a visual representation to show how much score the characters have, but in Shrek SuperSlam, that is absent. There's the crown to display who is in the lead, but you'll never know how much in the lead you are unless you've been counting. Another issue is the placement of the HUD. When players are in the heat of a game, you want to focus your eyes more on the combat of the game. Sometimes you'll need to shift your eyes to get your needed information of the game. In Shrek, your slam and the time are on opposite sides of the screen. It seems like a small complaint, but you'll need to look at two different parts of the screen to get all the information in the game. Smash games also do the same thing rather than make it compact, so even some of the bigger games are guilty of this one. Now when you look at One Piece, all the information you need is compact and easy to understand. Everything is at the top except the assist health, which isn't too bad. The only issue with this HUD is the health drains from end to out, making you have to check one edge of the screen then the other, rather than most fighting games where the health drains from out to in, putting everything in a nice condensed area. Next, I'd like to discuss the camera in these games. Shrek SuperSlam has a camera that comes from a single side angled down slightly. While this does do the job in showing everything you'd need in battle, a problem with only a slight angle is the depth perception can sometimes be very difficult to make out, especially in battles taking place in the air, and in a game like Shrek SuperSlam, you will be in the air quite a bit. One Piece Grand Adventure has a different way of delivering a camera, and the game does this by always having the camera positioned in a way that makes your opponent either to the left or right of you on the screen, except for cinematic events. This makes it extremely easy to tell where you're at in the game and also makes actions directly on your opponent easier since they'll always be to the left or right of you. Lastly, for visual design, I'd like to discuss the graphics, specifically the models and how they complement the hitboxes in the game. To keep it short and sweet, Shrek SuperSlam has poor execution on this too. Whether it's air grabs, slams, or just normal attacks, there's bound to be at least one time every match where it feels like you've been hit by something that didn't look like it should have even came close to connecting. This is something I also consider One Piece doing a mostly good job on. Mostly. Grabs aren't oversized, most jab combos look fair enough when they connect, and a lot of the graphics in general just match up really nicely. It's one of those games where even the idle animations and taunts have different hurtboxes, and it's always great to see that attention to detail. It's not perfect though, as there are still moves with questionable hitboxes such as this, like what the fuck even is this? Regardless, I think One Piece graphics do their job well enough, and if anything, do their job much better than Shrek does. The next category I'd like to discuss is the neutral game. One of the biggest points I brought up in why Shrek and most other arena fighters are anti-competitive is because the neutral in these games have been pulled off poorly. To describe in detail on how these games have poor neutral, I'd like to start by explaining free, fluid movement. Fast and free movement can be okay in some games like Smash Bros, but when a 3D plane is introduced, that's when it becomes very hard to keep in check. To use Smash Bros as an example, you can move fast and freely as you want, but because it is 2D, you are still forced to face your opponent. In Shrek SuperSlam, say you are approached by a raging Genji dashing straight for you. The obvious choice the Genji will go for is an air grab because it's its most useful option. Your options consist of running in any direction you want, start jumping on walls because you can do that infinitely, AntiAir in some situations, which is usually unsafe by the way because actually fighting in this game isn't viable, or, if any of those situations didn't sound good to you, how about a frame 1 roll that has invincibility? Needless to say, Shrek SuperSlam approached movement in a 3D plane very poorly. In One Piece Grand Adventure, you have a very fast movement option like you have in most arena fighters, but the only direction you can do it is towards your opponent. There are other movement options that are free, like the dive attack and some character-specific dash attacks, but nothing is as fast as the dash, as you can act out of it at any time with any move besides blocking with no lag. Another important part of a neutral game in arena fighters is to have solid anti-air abilities. This is a huge problem in Shrek SuperSlam, as this jumping and air grabbing is so strong that it has almost no counterplay whatsoever, especially for characters with smaller hurtboxes. Higher ground in Shrek SuperSlam is a huge part of the game's meta, making fights an optimal competitive play full of high ledge camping and jump vests. There is no way to counter the high ledge camping and players getting above you except with defensive options. Even the universal move dubbed by the community as an AntiAir isn't good enough to stop higher ground tactics. In One Piece Grand Adventure, however, there are more than enough tools to stop jump-happy opponents. Your mobility when jumping is slow unless you're using a dive attack, which does little damage and hitstun while also being quite unsafe on block. This makes getting caught by something while hopping around a lot more likely. If that's not enough, the game also has character unique attacks that will go vertically or diagonally, giving most of the characters a solid anti-air option. If you need even more, the opponent only gets one option in the air, and until they hit the ground again, they can't do another one of their air attacks. This makes being jump happy sometimes risky if your opponent is good at catching your air options. One last thing I'll mention for the neutral game is the defensive game. Defensive options are a key thing in most fighting games as they stop the game from being an approach fest. Shrek SuperSlam has both a frame 1 roll with invincibility and a frame 1 block with a very forgiving power shield window. There's the air grab almost completely covering smaller characters, making them safe while doing the best combo starter in the game. In One Piece Grand Adventure, it's simple and easy to grasp. There's a block that blocks anything that isn't a grab or unblockable. If you time the block correctly, it pushes them away and gives you meter, rewarding timing unlike Shrek's forgiving power shield mechanic. There are also solid counters to the blocking such as grabs and unblockable attacks, making the defensive game decent but not overpowered like in Shrek. Now, I was originally going to call this last segment Punish Game until I realized how little I could go into detail on this, so I threw Punish Game into a section I'm going to call Character Design. Starting off, I'd like to discuss diversity. Shrek SuperSlam has a roster of 20 characters but only has about 3 different playstyles, but that's just me stretching it. For most of the cases, you could just say the higher tiers do the same thing that the lower tiers do, while still having more. You could say Luna has a bait and punish style while Red Riding Hood is a zoner that controls space with stunning apples, but Red Riding Hood essentially is just a better Luna with more tools. In One Piece Grand Adventure, I'd go as far as to say it has the best character diversity out of all arena fighters I've played. There are rushdown characters, zoning characters, characters who are good at controlling space, glass cannons with high priority, and technical characters as well. Even when there are 2 obvious zoning characters, they still feel completely different from each other. Every character feels unique and it's great. In Shrek SuperSlam, the best you could do if you wanted to play a heavy character is play Cyclops, who is essentially a heavily nerfed Luna. In One Piece Grand Adventure, if you wanted to play a heavy character, you could play Wapol, an actual high HP heavy hitting and slow character. This diversity keeps the game fresh. Now we'll get into the Punish Game. Shrek SuperSlam has one of the poorest diversity in terms of fighting that I've ever seen. There's almost no character in this game that doesn't rely on grab somewhere in their combo game. The closest you get is Fiona, but even she can benefit from a grab every now and then. Grabbing and using anti-airs is a bread and butter shared by nearly the whole cast, and as you go up the top tiers, you just get more options to combo as you go. Why play Shrek when you can infinite without a wall by playing Luna and using an anti-air infinite? Why use Luna's anti-air infinite, which is limited to only getting ground grabs, when you could play as Gingy or Fiona and combo just about anything off of your entire move list? It really kills the fun of playing anyone who isn't a top tier because you'll basically just be playing a character that has the same setups and combos, but just can't do as much as them. But again, I feel as if One Piece Grand Adventure delivers here as well. Punish games will depend entirely on the character making game plans actually unique. Not every character will go for the same combos or setups because they actually put diversity into this game. There's a combo breaker mechanic that lets you break out of combos or cancel your own combos, allowing you to be a bit creative when doing punishes. How your character uses the environment also adds some diversity to the punish game, as you can use walls or different levels of the stage to set up even more punishment for your opponent. You also have quite a bit of fancy things you can do off OTG kicks in One Piece, and unlike Shrek, having an OTG setup doesn't instantly make you a top tier just for having it. With that, I conclude my more in-depth feelings about Arena Fighter game design. I felt it necessary to use Shrek SuperSlam and One Piece Grand Adventure as I felt they were living examples of good idea, bad idea. I would never have even considered the intricate design of balanced arena fighters if it wasn't for One Piece Grand Adventure, or to a lesser extent, Power Stone. After being with the Shrek scene for over a year, I learned a lot about the flaws you'll find in most unbalanced arena fighters. Too much freedom with movement, higher ground having advantages, unbalanced air-to-ground games, and many other issues plague this genre more than others, and I would have considered it a genre nigh impossible to balance if I never got to play One Piece Grand Adventure. At first, I didn't enjoy it because it was so different from Shrek, but the more I played it and paid attention to the design choices, the more and more I respected the game. I think it shows really just how close we are to a competitive arena fighter if a group of developers really wanted to make it happen. If you are interested in either Shrek SuperSlam or One Piece Grand Adventure, I left links to the Discord servers in the description below. I highly recommend that you try out the latter. I think it's a really well designed game for the genre it's a part of, and deserves some attention. If you're zealous enough, feel free to try out both of them and see how different the design of these games are. If you enjoyed the video, leaving a like and sharing it helps a lot. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next video.